Many blessings, everybody. My name is Dr. César. I'm part of HomiesEmpowerment, and we're designing a place of learning called HECHOS. It's an honor to be here with all of you. Now, oftentimes we hear about trauma that gets passed on in the body, and they talk about something called intergenerational trauma. That's real. There's a field of science that studies that. It's called epigenetics. And it's this idea that through our DNA, trauma can get passed on from our mothers, our fathers, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, and it goes back for generations. That's been proven to be true. But the field of science that we don't hear much about is intergenerational wisdom. If trauma can get passed on, you best believe that wisdom can get passed on. So for these times that may feel really difficult, where we're in quarantine, where we're not sure about what's going on, when so many people are getting sick and many people are passing on, it feels completely overwhelming and scary. But I want to remind you that amidst all of this, you also carry ancestral wisdom that in these times, it's so necessary to lean on. This idea of intergenerational wisdom, what is it that I'm talking about? Is that if we're able to quiet the mind, if we're able to go into deep study, and if we're able to remember or imagine, what was it like for my grandma? Now, I don't have to imagine because I was blessed enough to meet her. She co-raised me with my mom. And I remember my grandma. You know, now that I'm studying meditation, I think she meditated all the time, but the way she did it when she was in the kitchen and she was cooking, she would be whistling all the time. She was whistling, and I know there was a lot going on with our family. We were undocumented. Some of our family members were deported. Sometimes we didn't have a lot to eat. And my grandma was always there, a steady hand, always whistling, always continuing to be positive. I also remember how much love she always showed me. I could never do wrong because she always had the biggest hug ever for her grandson. Now that my grandma has passed on, I miss her so very much. But I dream of her a lot, I think of her a lot, and every morning when I meditate and I ask for an ancestor to visit me, she always visits and she always gives me these things called consejos, this advice. Well, you have that too. It's not particular to me. We've all had ancestors. Now, you might not have been connected to grandma or grandpa, or maybe you were, or maybe they're still living, which is such a beautiful thing. But if you would allow yourself to think about an ancestor, someone who has passed, and it may have been a blood relative, it may have been a love relative, or it may have been a historical figure. I talk a lot about Harriet Tubman because she is someone that I admire very much. And many of you are experts on the life of Harriet Tubman. But I'll tell you a little bit. Here's an amazing human being who is dealing with a difficult cancer, if you will, which is the cancer of racism and its form of slavery. So many people have been so indoctrinated and beaten and sold off into slavery, and even taught lies, given a false Bible. And what I mean by that is that slave owners gave African Americans what they called a Negro Bible, and they removed all of the parts in there about freedom, about Moses taking on Pharaoh. And so imagine a people who have been beaten and treated like slaves, and the books of wisdom have been taken from them, and yet still Harriet Tubman found a way to organize. And she organized at a time when sexism was also alive and well, when her own husband was so scared that he didn't want her to move forward, to move on, to fight for freedom in that way, because he was scared. So she had to leave him too, and she had to organize. And now we know it as an underground railroad, but it's a movement of a people who are going to fight to be free. Right now, in these times, we might need an underground railroad of love, of hope, of resistance, So many people all over the world are struggling, not just with pandemics, but with poverty and hunger and oppression and racism and sexism. In many ways, what we're facing is new, and in many ways, people before us have faced difficult times. Have they not? There have been viruses before. There has been hunger before. There has been pain before. And so how do we, at night, in the morning, imagine Harriet Tubman? Imagine that at some point half of her body was paralyzed. Imagine that she's fighting for freedom and that people are scared. How do we imagine her walking by faith and not by sight? How do we do that right now? How do we walk by faith when everything around us seems so difficult and scary? And in many ways it is. But they say that courage is fear that has done its prayers. And so what if we take all of our fears and we pray on them and we meditate? And what would it mean to turn them into courage? I think the example is in our ancestors. For me, it's in my abuelita. For me, it's in the example of Harriet Tubman. And there's another one, the example of Malcolm X. Malcolm X only got to live to age 39, a freedom fighter. His voice was so powerful, and he learned who he was while incarcerated. There are sisters and brothers right now watching this who are locked up, who are incarcerated. I just want to say to you that I see you, that you're in my heart and that you're in my prayers. And that when I think of you, I also think about Malcolm X. And so what I'm going to try to do right now is I'm going to try to share a letter from the heart, not memorize or anything like that. I want to imagine that in this special spiritual place, my grandmother, Malcolm X, and Harriet Tubman are all kicking it. And they want to write me this love letter, this intergenerational wisdom love letter. And this is what they're going to share. Now, they're sharing it for me, and I'm so thankful for that. But maybe these words are also for you. And after I share this letter, I'm hoping that you will take some time and write yourself an intergenerational wisdom love letter. That you think about ancestors that you admire, family members that deeply love you. And what I want you to imagine before you write is that they know you. They know your biggest strengths. They know your biggest fears. They know your challenges. This is what Harriet Tubman, my abuelita Socorro, and Malcolm X would say to me. Dear César, we see you. Sometimes you're doing too much. And we don't mean that we don't want you to stand up. What we mean is, for most of your life, you've become a workaholic. Now, sometimes you need it to, we understand. But sometimes you're working 70 to 80-hour weeks because you're avoiding something. You were addicted to coffee for a long time. And you were addicted to television for a long time. And you were addicted to working really hard for a long time. We think you're trying to escape. Stop trying to escape, mijo. Slow it down. And as you slow it down, remember, you're not a human doer, you're a human being. Would you just be still, be calm, relax? And I know it's hard because you carry a lot of trauma inside and you're afraid that if you're alone and you start to write, all of that's going to come up. Well, mijo, you need to heal from it. One step at a time, one ceremony at a time, one moment of forgiveness at a time for others and for you. You are not the collection of your mistakes. You are not a mistake. Stop seeing yourself through those mistakes. You know, you live in a system that teaches us that we're less than and not even equal to other human beings. Whether you get called 3/5 of a human being or you get called an illegal alien, oftentimes human beings are treated like savages, like we're not even real human beings. César, you are a real human being. We need you to love yourself. You know that this oppressive system wants you to not love yourself. This system wants you to think that you're illegal, that you're a savage, that you're 3/5 of a human being, and wants to lower your self-esteem, wants to subtractively school you, wants you to not know who your ancestors are, wants you to not know about intergenerational wisdom, but we're here to tell you it's real. I, Harriet Tubman, am real. I, Malcolm X, am real. I, Socorro Villafaña, am real. And we are part of your lineage and part of your legacy. And no, you're not African American, but it is okay to admire people from other ethnic and racial groups. Learn from us. We have a lot to teach you. But it's not about doing. You can't free anybody else. You can only free yourself. Would you work on freeing yourself? Would you work on drinking coffee less? Because you don't need to be a workaholic. Yes, we understand that you live in a world called capitalism that is making you pay bills and pay bills and pay bills, but that's going to lead you to your grave. You're not here to be a worker. You're not here to have a career. You're here to answer your life's calling. Your life's calling is to stand up for your own freedom. It's to heal yourself. It's to find your voice. It's to find your purpose. It's to stand up for freedom the way we stood up to love you and to speak out. Speak only when you need to. And remember, we gave you 2 of these. So do double the listening. Stop being so judgmental, especially towards yourself. Pray and meditate. And when you're praying and you're meditating, remember that sometimes you get these negative thoughts that aren't the truth. Stop beating yourself up, but do reflect. And don't confuse self-reflection with self-doubt. Yes, sometimes you're going to come up short as a father. Yes, sometimes you're going to come up short as a husband. But just remember, it's okay to hit the reset button and to start again. Continue to find your life's calling. Oh, we're so exciting and we're rejoicing that you're on your way, that you're listening to us, that you're tapping in to what is sacred inside of you. Tap into that intergenerational wisdom. Mijo, it's gonna be okay. Sometimes we've been through hell and back and we made it, we survived. Do you think we forgot about you? Nah, we didn't forget about you. You don't forget about you. But don't take human beings for granted. Your loved ones will not be around forever. Just like we weren't around forever. We all have our time, and remember that this is part of the cycle and the circle of life. We're born and we pass. Don't be afraid of death or the death of someone else. But rejoice. Rejoice. We love you so much. I hope that you'll have a moment and that you'll give yourself a moment to write yourself a love letter from the ancestors. And if you're willing, oh, it'd be so powerful if you shared it with someone else, because you never know if the letter that you write might have medicine for someone else. I don't assume that this had any medicine for you. That's not what this was about. It was just for us to call up the ancestors and to be able to remember. It would be such an honor to read your letters. Would you send them to us at HomiesEmpowerment@gmail.com? We would be so honored to read these letters. I know I would. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Please continue to build on your intergenerational wisdom that you carry. It's in your DNA. It's in your blood. Many blessings to all of you.